All right, good morning. For the folks that are here, you have some pastries and bagels on the way. I apologize that there's a delay. There's some fruit and granola and yogurt. There's also hot water in the back if you want some tea or anything from our kitchen. But welcome. It's great to have everybody. Okay, so today the topic is pretty clear to everybody. We're going to go over some of the highlights that we all liked from the ACI conference. And it's a great chance. We really wish we could take everybody with us to this conference. It's an incredible just injection to get you excited about home performance around the country. And I keep thinking about everybody here every time I'm out there about how much it would be great to have everybody be part of all the sessions and talking with people around the country. I met a few people that I've read their books and talked to them through email, answering questions. It's just really cool to be around all those folks. New people in the industry, people who have been in the industry for 30 plus years. So we're going to try to cover some of the best stuff here, and so it should be really interesting.
Who all made it this year?
From our staff, it was Tim, Scott, myself and Ryan, and then Cassandra and Drew up in Seattle. The majority of us presented there. And then from folks that we know from the contracting world, Green Savers, Craig and Robert from their staff. Chad, of course, was there. Andrew from the Energy Trust and Scott from Energy Trust. Laura was there. Don, of course. A few people. Clear Result was there pretty much in force. It's their hometown, Austin. So a lot of folks from Austin and a lot of Clear Result folks and a few from Portland that presented and were there. Am I missing anybody?
There's a handful of folks from Community Service Consortium down in Dallas.
Yep. A lot of the low-income weatherization folks from Multnomah County, we saw a lot of their staff there. So you guys know Jack, a few of their other staff.
Yeah, most of the county was there.
Yeah, a lot of county representation. Yeah. They were there. A lot of them were there taking the Healthy Home Evaluator exam, which I'm going to go over. On our ride back, there was like a whole staff of us on the same plane. It was really, we basically took over the plane of like the home performance community and from Portland. So yeah, it was a good representation from our state. I was just going to show a couple photos from, get this to work. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Oh, upcoming sessions. Next month is OSHA confined spaces. So if you're concerned about how this affects your business and a little bit more about OSHA and the new regulations coming in, we're lucky to have Lisa Pickard from Neil Kelly. She's a safety coordinator there. She's done a lot of research into this. And we'll have Dave McLaughlin from the state here just to kind of go over what the guidelines are. I also went to a session on OSHA confined spaces as well, so we'll have some good information there. And then in June, we're going to do a session on indoor air quality monitoring and using the Air Advice product and sales around that. Should be really good with jet mounts. Just a couple photos from Austin. There's a lot of similarities to Portland. You got bike lanes. They like music there a lot. They have a really beautiful waterfront. They have a lot of pride in their state like we do. Lots of good food there. There's a lot of art. It was just a really fun place to be. How many people have been to Texas, different parts of it? Has anybody been to Austin? Yeah, a couple. It was my first. I've been to the Dallas area quite a few times. Nice contrast to the other parts of Texas. I also a few times forgot that I was in Texas. A lot of people there didn't even have an accent. So a lot of transplants there. There's a big university there. But really great place to have a conference. I think next year the conference is is it Memphis? Is that right? Nashville. Another music town. All right, we're going to turn things over to Don.
These are my slides.
Oh, sorry.
So.
Doing the shuffle here.
That's right. right now.
Okay,
All right. And we'll go live with the camera.
we're all on. Yep.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone in the room. How are we doing today?
Yeah.
All right. Let's do that one more time. How are we doing today?
Good.
All right. It's early. We got to wake up a little bit. All right. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that you should all come on out to today's guild lunch. It's our regular member meeting, but it's sponsored by Milgard Windows. They'll be giving a little talk, and they are picking up the tab for lunch. And so come on out. It's at the Lucky Lab, just down the street here at on Hawthorne, from 11:30 till 1. Thank you very much.
That should work. If not, just cue me.
All right. And so what we're going to be doing today is there's 5 of us that are going to be going through either some slides or some high-level concepts that we learned from this great session, from this great conference in Austin. They packed a lot into 3 days. It used to be a 4-day conference. They now have it as 3 days, kind of, with tons of technical sessions on Monday that kind of make you want to go anyways on the Monday. And then they pack in a home performance with Energy Star partner meeting where there's tons of valuable information about where the USDOE is thinking about taking the home performance with Energy Star program. And then there's just tons of big thinkers and great trainers and so on. And so we all got a lot out of it. And so today I'm going to be presenting on one particular session that I attended that was about a national campaign. It's almost like a Got Milk campaign for home performance. And I felt like this was, as a leader of the Home Performance Industry Association, I thought, this sort of high-level national thinking would be an appropriate message coming from me. We've got Ryan Klemmer from Inhabit, who attended many interesting technical sessions and sales and training sessions and so on. He's going to be giving us a sample of the ones that he attended, followed up by Andrew Shepard from Energy Trust, who will also be presenting on some high-level stuff. Then we're going to jump into Jason Elton, who wants to share some sessions that he went to. And then finally, we'll wrap up with Chad Ruhoff from Neil Kelly. So without further ado, I'll just jump right into it and talk about this idea for a national campaign to transform consumer demand. So the thinking is that our industry is facing across the country some an element of stagnant demand. That stagnant demand has been identified as a bit of a persistent barrier to market adoption. And ultimately, the Rocky Mountain Institute, along with the many other partners that they're coming together with, and the Rocky Mountain Institute is funded by many large foundations to put on a national campaign to promote home performance and ultimately to make it such that improved home energy performance becomes the expected and aspired to standard in U.S. homes. So that's aligned with us. That's what we want. And here we have, a national think tank putting their effort and time into figuring out what a campaign needs to look like, into figuring out how to get it funded, and so on. So I thought, wow, this is a great thing for all of you working out there, selling it, working in the trenches, doing the installs, to know that kind of support and that kind of thinking is trying to ultimately build that national demand and build that momentum that we all figure should exist, because we all know, we've all drunk the Kool-Aid. We all know this is great stuff and that everyone should do it, but not everyone does. So I'll just give you a little window. Don't want to take too much time from all the really interesting slides of everyone else. I just wanted to give you a better window into the kind of thinking that's going into this national campaign. So they're thinking that they need to create an emotional, evocative, and empowering message that catalyzes action across society and creates the new normal for home performance. So RMI, the Rocky Mountain Institute, has been collaborating with this group on this campaign. They've been doing meetings. The session that we had at the conference was just one of many different type of learning sessions that they're having with the industry, with various stakeholders in the industry. Some of the recommendations of this, and this was a learning session, this is a work session. So ultimately, the presentation that I'm showing you is the lead up into the work session, because then we all did this really interesting exercise of what should the national campaign not be, and what should it not include. And so it was sort of a different way of coming at it. So nobody was just brainstorming, this is what needs to go into it, and you need to have a mascot of this type, and so on. But it was, all right, well, make sure that, you're not talking down to people, or make sure that you're not just, associating yourself with, this other random type of, negative campaign. What other things did you take away from the don't do? Tim Miller from Inhabit?
My suggestion was don't give every contractor a 100-page white paper and have them stick it in the face of the homeowner. That's pretty much the worst thing we could do. This was coming off of, I think, a Russian exercise in, submarine design or something. What are the stupidest things you could do in anything? And that was so we all got to say what was the worst idea you could bring to this thing.
So it really, but it helped define the space within which they could come up with solutions.
Yes.
So I actually am probably going to take this exercise to other problem-solving challenges in my life and professional life and so on. It seemed like a really helpful exercise to constrain, in some ways, the solution set. Let's see here. I wanted to just move right on to some of the things that folks are thinking of, how they're framing it all. The Demand Institute found that energy efficiency is the home characteristic where there's the biggest satisfaction gap. Homeowners see energy efficiency and low bills as important, but it's an area where they're not satisfied. And so this group and others have done a lot of studies to say, there is a demand for this. Folks just don't fully understand that we are the solution. So the idea is to create some campaigns that consider insights from prior social campaigns and apply them to scaling investments in home energy upgrades. For example, only you. So in this regard, they are working at instilling personal responsibility. So this is Smokey the Bear saying only you can stop forest fires. Friends don't let friends drive drunk. Here we are creating new notions of proactive friendships. So, if you're at your party, I think most of us in college at some point have seen a friend who we've been able to at least, throw an arm over or something and say, maybe the couch is good for you. And it's campaigns like this that help instill in us this sense of a new notion of friendship, just a different dimension of a friendship that you can say things like that to one another. Here's the dummies. I can't remember, are these from the 90s or the 80s?
Yeah.
Did people remember the?
I think they had a long career.
They had a long career, those poor crash test dummies. Buckle up. There's been countless campaigns for buckle up, but I grew up with these jokers, and this is consider the implications of inaction. So this is an idea of inaction, which is in some ways something that we could probably leverage. Here's a campaign that tried to make the Techie ownership. This is we are empowered. We're an empowered generation. This is our time. We can do this. This is this is from the Midwest. I can't remember whereabouts this was, but this was certainly a very personal and emotional story that supposedly this helped reduce contributed the reduction of meth use in that area by a significant amount. I think it was like 40% or something significant, which of course, even 30 to 40% is not enough. But it's a significant change, and this is the kind of level that this group is thinking of to create change in our market. Because we were in Texas, they had to show us this. This is actually, what's this about? Littering. Yeah.
That's for litter, yeah.
This was a littering campaign. So I just wanted you to know that there's these national think tanks that are on, that have our back, and that are doing everything they can to put wind at our backs. And so, this is the kind of things that get talked about, that we have an opportunity to contribute to at the National Home Performance Conference called ACI. So that's me, and I think Ryan Clemmer's up next, and he looks ready to go.
I'm going to see if I can see if we got any questions on here while Ryan's getting set up. They're saying adjust the camera.
Thanks, Tom. Remember, this is your brain.
Slides are not progressing online, so we got something going wrong here. Hold on.
Pause for a second, figure it out.
What's going on here?
They showed a video at this session where the body bag being put in front of the smoking companies.
I think I know what's going
He's
on.
showing the second, the primary scans, the secondary. Super powerful.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Hold on.
Yeah.
Look in video. Screen. Okay. I think we just had a problem with the screen was showing. Yes, there we go.
There we go. We got feedback from everyone online.
Yeah.
How many people do you have online?
We have about 13 people online.
Great.
A good mix. Got a few folks from Washington. There we go.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Ryan Clemmer. If I don't know some of you, I'd love to chat with you afterwards a little bit. Happy to share any of the content that I talk about today. Really short version of a really amazing week for me as well. I kind of approached the conference this year looking at things from the technical side. I don't get to be out in the field much anymore and run equipment and think about things from a technician's perspective. And so I approached the whole conference to try to draw knowledge out of the conference and bring it back and serve it up in a way where it would benefit the technician's mind the best. And so the themes for me were these, and the approach that I took was this. Measure and verify your work. No one else is, okay? You know, we as a program look at metrics and what we're doing as far as number of measures that are put into projects. We look at costs associated with doing that work, but are we really measuring it at a level where you can show pre and post numbers that are showing what you are actually doing in that home to quantify the energy savings within that home? Just pose the question. That, you know, looking out in the room here, how many of you can accurately say you know what the savings is in the homes that you're interacting with? Anyone? Confidently?
Using like cake software.
Okay.
Yes.
So, but that's modeled, right? Is it measured? Is it measured and verified?
You don't
So-
know how the homeowner's going to run their house.
Yeah. So there's a lot of variables that go into it, but what I'm gonna show today is one contractor that's no different than any of you sitting in the room that's just simply asking himself that question and wanting a better answer and driving after things. the one thing that he's doing is he's looking for feedback loops to understand and improve himself, his business, and what he's doing as a home performance contractor. So, High Performance Delivered. This is a group on Monday and a panel that really took a very detailed look at measurement and verification of the work that they're doing. This gentleman here, Mike McFarland, is kind of the leader of this whole group here. They're based down in California. Mike lives in Redland, and the other two here, Dan and Keith, both in the Bay Area, but have all paired up and are incredibly passionate about doing things exceptionally well. And so they're using continuous data logging and analysis of that data logging to test themselves and test what they're actually doing in the homes. So measure performance of mechanical and enclosure installations. Some of the enclosure work that Mike's done, I'll show a couple slides farther on, will make you scratch your head a little bit and go, whoa, this guy's going pretty deep with some of this stuff. But I had a lot of time to just spend time talking with Mike afterwards, and he's just incredibly driven to find answers about things and is driven to ask questions and go, why are we doing it this way? Why has BPI taught us to do it this way, and why do we accept this as the norm? The nice thing about all three of these individuals is they're literally living what they're teaching. They're doing all of this analysis on their own homes as well as clients' homes. And for everyone's education, I asked them really hard questions about how is this profitable? How are you making this profitable? And the answer is it's not on the measurement side of it, but the reason that we're doing it is to understand it at a deep enough level to be able to be the best at what we're doing. And that's something, if I think about all of you and the interactions that I've had with all of your businesses, there's a component part of that in all of you that I've interacted with. And that's something that resonated when I talked with all three of these individuals. I think that Mike would be someone that would be great to bring up for Techie Breakie and actually go through some of the work that he's done. So tools to perform what they were doing here. Temperature, humidity data loggers, this is a Hobo data logger. He's got 18, 20 of these devices that he's deploying into the houses that he's working on. He's using tools like a flow hood, which, Kurt, I'm sure you guys have flow hoods, and you're measuring, delivered airflow in your systems. He's looking at wattage data loggers, gas meter data loggers, and kind of seaming all that together and taking that data and surfacing it up in a way where you can really understand what's going on. What are the benefits of doing this? You can deploy kind of a long-term solution to look at what's going on with homes. It's kind of gather the data for design conditions. So all of the things that he's doing, he's using that information to help himself understand how to better design his next project, the next one, how to do it better and better all the time. The interesting thing on all this, and the question that I would pose to everyone in the room and everyone online, as I've watched our interaction with you as a program change over the years, many of us collected utility data, and I don't know who's collecting that today. Show of hands. Anyone collecting the data? Yeah, see, shake your hands. Not so much anymore. And I would pose, if you want to continue to improve, taking a look at that monthly data is imperative, and figuring out how to disaggregate that data in a way that you can use it and pair it with any of the data logging that you would do. So if there's one thing that you can take away today is ask yourself those questions. What am I not doing today that I may have done in the past that could potentially impact what I do in the future? And that's one of the takeaways that I have with this. So you thought the workbook was complex and challenging to work with. This is Mike McFarland's spreadsheet here. And you can't really see this. If you want to see all of his spreadsheets, happy to share his whole presentation with you. But each column here is a data logger that's in the house collecting information. And he's pulling all that information together into a format where he can drive to results like this. So this is looking at an HVAC system, delivered efficiency for the system at 102 degrees outside air temperature, 92% measured efficiency. That's the delivered efficiency of that system that he's installed. So that means he's measuring the wattage of the fan that's moving the air in the system. He's that good at his duct work. And all of these guys said any homes that we go into, we're literally ripping out ductwork all the time and going that far with our systems. And so it's interesting to see that. Looking at the delivered EER on the system and then the wattage here, you can see in the next slide as I move past here, this is just measuring heat pump water heater. Here's one of his watt data loggers that he's using. He's watching flow out of this, so he's got that. These are the devices that he's primarily settled into, these two manufacturers. I've used the Hobo loggers before as well. They're really nice. I haven't used this other company's stuff before, but these are the ones that he's doing. And this is the kind of measured results that he's getting out of the data loggers. So he's got this stream of data that he's looking at. He's looking at gallons, here, energy usage here, and the COP, and results coming up in here. So he's taking the work that he's deploying and putting the metrics to it to verify what he's doing. That's as simple as it is. But he's kind of that anal about what he's doing to really capture this, to understand it at a deep level. The interesting things, just some talking points about Mike that I really liked was he was using his business as guinea pigs. He was using his own home as kind of analysis. So he was doing tests on shutting things down, how his shell interacted with his HVAC systems in unique ways. So he's just constantly exploring the data and driving for stuff. So here's that performance data out of that hot water system. That hot water system was from his home. And so you can see kind of what the COP of the system actually was performing at, and what gallons per day he's using. Anyone have a gauge on gallons per day? How many people in that house? Just off a guess. Anyone want to guess?
76 gallons a day.
76 gallons, average gallons per day. 3. Any other guesses? 5 people in that house. And he's taken his own personal residence from being pretty energy intensive from a consumption standpoint to being a net zero home. He's done that through a lot of different solutions, but he's slowly worked through that. So switching gears out of Mike, Dan, and Keith, this company here, Resi Speak, was moving into the space, presented with Energy Savvy, and talked about data from a perspective on how utilities and programs are looking at ways to target homes through data aggregation and finding the right homes to go after first. So the interesting thing about the data here is looking at the way that they are looking at these curves from existing conditions to new conditions, plotting these regression lines here, and showing the space in between of what the actual energy savings would be in those homes. So again, the math and metrics behind this company coming in and trying to help utilities and other programs like ours is one where you're really looking closely at the actual energy consumption, as opposed to deemed or estimated consumption. So the theme of this tying together for me was, if you aren't measuring your own things, and the programs like ours aren't doing a superb job at measuring those things at a detailed level, and maybe even Energy Trust, not looking at deep savings like that, start doing it yourself, because it's going to surface itself in the next few years that you're going to want to know exactly what your own portfolio looks like, because it'll bring you to the table and say, this is what our actual savings are, and help you in that way. So just take away, think about trying to figure out how to measure some of your own work in a little bit more detail. Okay, so switching back to Mike again, this was later in the week, and he posed the question about how we're using blower doors, how we're settling into ACH natural numbers, and how our building shells are really actually working. We all can talk about what the ACH natural number is or what the ACH 50 number is with each other, and have an understanding of how that house is performing from an exfiltration and infiltration number based on what we've been taught by BPI. But this is Mike asking more and more deep questions. And so here's what he did here was, he said, death to the BAS calculation, practical CO2 tracer gas testing. So this is how deep Mike was going with his. He's like, that's nice and all. Those numbers that we learned in the BAS calculations are great. ASHRAE's using it for 62.2 calculations. But how is the house actually interacting in natural conditions? So he dove in and figured out, how to use tracer gas and measure this with the same data logging equipment and understand things to a much deeper level. And some of his understandings in the fallout of that data were the houses are performing dramatically different than what we are saying they do just with the simple math from BAS. So again, pushing you to think about, what you're doing. This was a nice, just kind of fun piece of data here, and this is one that kind of made me laugh in the study, where he used his own office and shut down his HRV and his ventilation systems in his own office, and recorded some of the comments from his staff at the end of the day when his CO2 levels were a little bit higher in the building. So he referenced this as a study from Lawrence Berkeley National Labs here. And so 1 in 9 scales of decision-making performance. Test subjects showed significant reduction on 6 of the scales at CO2 levels of 1,000 parts per million and larger, reductions of 7 of the scale of 2,500 ppm. The most dramatic declines in performance in which subjects were rated as dysfunctional were for taking initiative or thinking strategically. So he was measuring CO2 levels in his own office and measured in the afternoon. One of his employees going, man, I'm having troubles, thinking and acting this. That's total anecdotal, but he's got data that's starting to show, and he's starting to align all these things together. And so this is why he's doing the studies that he is and looking at things the way that he is because he's just curious. So this is the data loggers he was using here. Again, Hobo data loggers, CO2 monitoring. A lot of you guys are using Air Advice. It has that equipment available within it. And what he was doing with the tracer gas stuff, I'll go back here, he's actually taking canisters of CO2, dispersing CO2 into an empty house. No homeowners in here when he's doing the test. He's putting a CO2 monitor centrally located in a room like this on a pole, and then he's watching the decay on a curve. So the curve would start here with CO2 levels high, close to the highest levels of what this would measure, and watching it decay over time. And with that decay, he's actually able to determine how that building is reacting in natural conditions. So no HVAC equipment on, but how that building is dispersing that tracer gas. Then he's going in and he's turning on HVAC equipment and seeing how the house operates under those conditions. So he's testing each different condition and seeing how that curve looks and how it operates. And he's able to isolate kind of room by room what he needs to do as far as getting air into space to balance the comfort and the performance of the home. So science at a really, really unique level with what Mike was doing. So to wrap up my section here, the questions that I still ask myself are, why home performance? I ask myself that all the time still. A better understanding of the built environment is one of the core things that still runs through me. A desire to solve the homeowner's problems, I believe, is something that runs through all of you as you're working through your work. It definitely was running through these 3 individuals to be the best at what we do. I think that's the one thing that we're all trying to do is separate ourselves from the standard contractor in the back of their truck trying to provide a solution to a homeowner. All of us have a base understanding of building science that's at a little bit higher level than other folks in the drive to continue doing the best at what we can. Not to rely on models. That was one of the things that just, I've always struggled with the models that we use. I know that all of you have as well as technicians. And so to not rely on that and to think about how I can measure my own work really resonated with me. And then just simply to verify the performance. And thinking about that, the verification of performance, if I were back out working side by side with you all in the field, that would be something that I would want to drive to more and more is how do I verify my own performance so that I know what my own portfolio is. Because I think that is what's going to take you all to the next level as our industry evolves, is understanding what your impact is and being able to measure it. So there you have it. There's my portion. 15 minutes. That's what we had, right?
Oh, sweet.
Cool.
We'll pause for any questions online or in the room while we get set up for Andrew.
I have a question.
Sure.
Would the program consider establishing a data logger library that we could rent?
So I had a thought about this. This is a really good question. Here's the thought, is in conjunction with the guild and the participating contractor base, I think that if everyone were to pool together the cost of actually putting together a dyno kit that Mike describes, which is, I don't know, anywhere between $2,500 and $5,000 for the hardware to do that, everyone coming together and pooling for something like that, and then bring Mike up and do a training around that, and then have that as a toolkit that we can all start maybe using on different projects, and then highlight that amongst the group. It seems like a smart thing to do, and so I'd look to Don to maybe help us try to pull something like that together eventually. But I'm sure that we'd be interested in contributing to something like that a little bit. So,
and we have a partnership with Air Advice. We have 2 Air Advice monitors, and you can measure a lot of indoor air quality metrics. We're starting to measure some homes before and after to get some numbers, especially with the Coley project we're doing, because a lot of those have a lot of home repair and issues going on. And then we're also starting to deploy people interested in indoor air quality and monitor what's going on in their homes. I know some of you guys use that equipment. If we have capacity, you can check out our Air Advice monitor, but right now it's in higher rotation. But I've had a few businesses contact us to see if they could use it, which we've accommodated that. So there's a lot of different tools that you can deploy. I will say that the Air Advice numbers that I've looked at with Jeff on some big projects, including one that you guys did on a daycare, are amazing. The results are instantaneous to see the effect that it has, and it's so satisfying, just like Ryan says, to see that real time instead of waiting a year to see what your energy bills are going to do. So it kind of really plays in with what you're saying, just to see those results real time.
The other thing that, the challenge with it still exists with having the relationship with the homeowners that you're working with to access past and future energy consumption data. So I know that there's organizations like Green Button that are still working very hard to unlock the data streams for homeowner consumption of data, and my bet is that most of your customers freely hand over their bills to you to show that to you. It's not something that they're trying to hide in any way. But if you think about, metering data up here, measured monthly data down here, and where we're at, you need to start getting to the point where at least you're capturing the monthly data so that that can feed into any of the other data logging that you'd be doing. So, if you're not doing that still, at least take a picture of it, because who knows, maybe there's an app that comes out that we can use that we take a look at that picture and disaggregate at least the monthly data to a point where we can see what that is and use that metrics. And that takes us from down at the floor up to at least here, and then someday up to the real time where you've got demand side management stuff working. So, any other questions?
All right, we'll transition into Andrew.
Cool. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks.
So kind of shifting gears from true measurement and verification to more theoretical performance metrics, such as home energy scoring. Show of hands, how many of you in here are familiar with EPS? Most of you. How many are using EPS as a customer engagement tool? Like actually showing it to your customers, going through, maybe it's that test out, maybe not necessarily test in. A few of you? Great, that's good. So down at ACI, I had a few priorities of what I wanted to accomplish and the main reasons of why I went down there. And really, my main mission and my main focus was to connect with some folks from the U.S. Department of Energy to talk with them about their home energy scoring system, which is called HES, or Home Energy Score. But first, Breakie, I was, just thinking about putting this together. I'm like, that's Australian for breakfast, right? So I was like, I'm going to go do a presentation at a Breakie, so I can't call this a PowerPoint, right? So I'm going to call this is my song line, right? This is my dreaming of kind of what I'm dreaming in the home energy score world and what we hope to see come out of it. So hopefully none of you, drift into dreaming when I'm presenting here. But also wanted to show off some Aboriginal dot art. I love this art. I also wear my Blundstones just to totally be in the spirit of the Australian thing. So residential energy labels, why should you care, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. There's so much effort and so much money going into these things, but it really comes down to, does this actually add value to what you're doing? And that's hopefully from what I'm going to talk about today, you'll have a little bit better idea of maybe what is being thought about from a national perspective and why there is so much energy being put into these scores and scoring systems. So my slide presentation here is basically kind of the highlight slides from 4 presentations that were put on by the US DOE. So these aren't my slides, but I'm going to try to represent them to the best of my ability here. So why should you care? It is a way to show a physical metric to your customers on what you're actually doing in the home, right? You could go through the trouble of putting all these data loggers in the homes and getting real data, but obviously that takes time, it is costly, and the results come later. So modeled savings and a modeled metric is a nice way to come up with something that's a little bit more immediate that you can actually share with your customers. If there were other people out there doing these scores and then presenting you that information, that's another form of lead generation. So in other words, if home inspectors, for example, at time of sale were producing these scores when they're doing their typical home inspection, and then that new home buyer says, wow, I have this energy report, I should probably do something about this, they're going to call you. So now you have a whole other team of home inspectors potentially shifting some work your way. So that's another great reason why these scores are potentially important for what you do. Like I mentioned, customer engagement, it could potentially be a nice piece to sit down at the table with them and show them, how their investment in their home actually is benefiting them from a model perspective. And the last thing here is the reason why this is important at the national scale is because there are financial products that are being developed, and these ones here are more mortgage-based financial products, but products that do recognize energy savings in homes and actually provide that homeowner a benefit for getting a score and provide that homeowner more capital for investing into the work that you do. So in other words, if somebody were to get this score offered through a home inspector, they could then qualify for one of these loans. They now have money in their pocket that they can then use your services. So this is all starting to work together. And like I said, I'm really coming at this from the U.S. standpoint and from the U.S. DOE's standpoint of things, and I'll kind of talk about how EPS relates into this. But really, I'm referring to AEIOU. I'm referring to the home energy score, which the next slide will dive into that a little bit more. So this is, like I said, my dreaming, the vision, kind of how all this stuff is coming together. I mean, really, Don mentioned that I'm kind of looking at more from the high level of this stuff, and really that's what this is all about, is looking at the full real estate industry and how your work and home scoring plugs into the broader, spectrum of what's actually going on out there. So you have lenders, appraisers, the real estate agents, the home inspectors, EE services that would be more in line with what the work that you guys are doing. You have the various multiple listing services, which is where, if you're shopping for a home, that's where you're going to find information about the homes that you're potentially, comparing against. And then the vision here is to have kind of a data place where all this energy information goes to make this information and the work that you guys do much more visible and much more available for people who are working in this industry. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So it's really, the idea here is taking home improvement from the energy side and bringing it more into the light and the forefront of the very most important decision that people make, buying decision that people make in their lives, which is their home. So, I mean, wouldn't that be a beautiful thing if people were actually looking at energy efficiency when they were making their home purchase? And through processes like what's outlined here, we can start to make that more of a reality. Yeah.
Well, when you buy a car, it's obvious you have to have a sticker on the window, right?
Right.
That shows the
Right.
fuel economy. in Europe, you cannot sell an apartment or a house without producing an EPS or something similar.
Right,
first.
exactly.
I don't understand why it's not mandatory.
Because this is America, and we don't have to do things we don't want to. So, I mean, being that we were in Texas, that was very, fitting. Actually. So, anyway, this is the home energy score from the DOE, and it's arguably a simpler metric than our Energy Trust EPS score. It's a 1 through 10 score. 10 is best, 1 is worst, and that's pretty intuitive to people. They know that a 6 is better than a 4, or a 9 is better than a 3, for example. So it's a really nice way to show a consumer, hey, your home is performing, so good on a 1 through 10 scale. There is a more granular side of this also that does provide more metrics such as the kilowatts and the therms and the savings, and there are some back-end reports, but this is in essence the score sheet that is provided to homeowners. So maybe I'll pause right there. Any questions at all about this so far?
Why don't they move it the other way around? Like, why isn't 1, like, the smaller number should use the least amount of energy? And 10,
Right.
What if you get a 12, right? Like, what if it's off the scale?
Well, exactly. And I think, the work that you guys do, we could take this to 11 for sure, right? No, I don't know. I mean, that's always, it's always a criticism that Energy Trust receives, that the lower score is actually counterintuitive. And we're like, no, it's like golf. And they're like, no, but what about the HERS score that goes the other direction? And we're like, well, we thought it was better to go this other direction. And so these discussions have been happening for years and years and years. And this is what the USDOE arrived at as what they felt was the most easily understandable, metric, and the best way to display it to the homeowner. Sure. The idea here really is, you can have your own thought about this, but the idea is to have something that's digestible within 5 seconds. It doesn't require a 3-hour training to understand what's going on here, right? You pretty much get it right off the bat, and that was the intent. Now, my personal belief is that I think as a society and I think as a culture, we're faced with so much complexity that I think we're able to, take in a little bit more of a complex metric, but I think this is also a really nice, start into kind of bringing this to the masses, basically. So this is kind of impressive also. So from a national perspective, the DOE has been successful in producing, they're probably at about 38,000 scores at this point in time throughout the country. That's a pretty large number. And this is over the past, 3 or so years of them doing this. For comparison, Energy Trust has been producing energy performance scores on homes since basically 2009. Our new homes program is just about to turn the 10,000th score. And I think through you guys and Home Performance, we've done about 2,000 formal official scores that have been delivered to the customers. So, in a matter of just a few years, the national scoring, environment has really started to take off here. And more than half of these were just in the past year alone. So here's all the places in the country where the DOE has basically sent this program out. A lot of different places. Something that you might start seeing actually is down in Eugene, eWeb. They are also producing these scores, and they're presenting these scores to their ratepayers down there. And so that's something that you should be aware of. You also might see some of these scores going out there more through other BPA utilities. It's probably also important to mention that in the state of Oregon, Don and a few of us here have been involved in a rulemaking process that is through the Oregon Department of Energy that we, it's called House Bill 2801, but it's basically the House bill that sets up a score as a formally recognized score through the Oregon Department of Energy. And in that basically application process and in that process of becoming a formal score, the Oregon Department of Energy is looking at 3 different scores to potentially become official scores in our state. EPS is one of those scores, HES is one of those scores, and the HERS score is also one of those scores. So this isn't something that is only happening, on the East Coast. It is in our backyard as well. So it's important to be aware of this. So new partners as of last year, a bunch of new utilities and different programs, coming into the program.
Is Oregon the only state DOE that's pushing that?
It's a good question. I'm going to say no, because I'm pretty sure that there are some other states where that the Department of Energies are in tune with this. We might be the only state that has gone down the path of devising a metric to come up with a formally approved score. That might be specific to Oregon, but I'm not sure about that. All right, so just some metrics about home energy score. 37,000 plus homes, half a home scored in the past year. Almost probably over 300 assessors now nationwide producing these scores. Growing statewide adoption, local governments. This is kind of cool. So Cake Systems is actually operating in other states as well, and raters, some of these raters are using Cake Systems, that same software that many of you use, to produce these HES scores as well. So in the same way that Cake produces an EPS for you, Cake can also produce an HES for these other regions. So that's kind of cool. And it's just through an API connection between their software and the DOE modeling tool. So
just so everyone knows, the data that you submit to us currently right now, HPXML compliant data, will seam into this score. So we have the functionality in place to be able to deploy that solution if we so decide to do.
Great. Yep.
So, yeah.
And this should not get overlooked. The whole concept of getting this information into the multiple listing services for real estate transactions. That's a big effort that's going on nationally. There is a spot in our local RMLS where EPS information can get put in there. HES information can get put in there. Green building certification information can go in there as well. So getting this information into the eyes of the consumer, super important, and that's recognized at a national level, and there's many things happening to make that happen. Once again, linking realtors and tying the score to financing. So this is just one of the financial products that I was talking about. Basically, it's similar to if you're familiar with the FHA 203K loan that is available, where the borrower can basically finance more money to put toward home energy upgrades. This then, it's a new loan product that simplifies that process to the point where people are actually going to want to do it. 203K loans really don't get done that often, but this is a much simpler process that will allow the homeowner to qualify for 15% more than the mortgage of that home. That's money that they'll get from the bank that they can then spend on home energy upgrades. It's also, I don't know the specifics about this, but the consumer could then take that money and pay off a previous loan. So if somebody is refinancing their home, they could go through this process, get a home energy scores, take that money, and then pay off a loan that they have, maybe through Craft 3 or one of the loans that they've already done. So that's another really cool thing, about this, where this home energy score might become a really important attribute to kind of tack on to these homes that you guys have already performed work on.
Can I just see that they're increasing the home value by 15%?
Right here?
They're saying you can...
Up to 15%. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I guess that's basically saying that if the house appraised at $300,000, for example, they could potentially qualify for $45,000 in extra, finance to put toward these upgrades.
And it's as completed value.
So they consider the value of the improvements.
Right.
But that, Don here, that is going to be a potential challenge in the implementation of this. Last year the Home Performance Guild advanced a bill in the Oregon legislature, not this past session, but in the 2015 session, to provide credits for the homeowners for the increase in value associated with energy efficiency. But the appraisers, have a hard time saying, well, we don't know what the appraised increase in value is. So that's something that the DOA acknowledges. This is a product that's available now. People can use this right now. But there are going to be, some kinks in the hose to work out as it goes along. and relations to partners like EPS and so on is also going to have to be figured out. But this is a huge shift for our industry.
Does it work for solar?
I don't know specifically. I would assume so, but I don't know. All right. So how to get involved? You know, this, I just wanted to throw this up there to show kind of how simple it is and why the DOE is getting such traction with this score. It's actually pretty straightforward. A lot of the training that you guys have already taken is the prerequisite basically to become one of these assessors. And then there is additional training to become more familiar with their specific system. But you know, you guys are all positioned to start offering these scores with just a small amount of extra investment to start doing this. So that's really the main point here. So that's really all I had. I mainly wanted to present that you know, at a national level, home energy scores are becoming more and more common, and there's a lot of national effort and investment going toward these, and that if you've kind of haven't really been paying attention to home energy scoring up until now, it might be a really good time to start to kind of get in tune with some of these things that are going on, because I really truly believe that it's a way that you can bring additional value to the customers that you're working with. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Andrew. All right, any questions online? Okay, I think I'm up next. All right, well, let me do that. So, death to be it. All right, I focus primarily on health and safety in the household. So there were a lot of sessions on health and IAQ, or indoor air quality. It's a big topic. I'm going to go over, there was a great session that Larry Zarker and a guy from the Midwest that's done a lot of healthy home work, and the head of the GHHI program. I'm trying to remember her name. Ruth Ann? Ruth Ann. Ruth Ann, yeah. She received an award at BPI, Tony Award, and also Carolyn from New Zealand, which I'm going to go over some of the stuff she presented, which is really interesting. So you guys have been getting all these emails from BPI about the Healthy Home Evaluator, so I just wanted to go into it a little bit deeper so people can know if it's relevant to them. There's a lot of focus going into the health of a home, especially post ARA funding around energy. There may be money down the pike to promote making homes healthier. There's a lot of studies that have done, multiple studies that show the indoor air quality in homes is really bad, and it can affect especially people with asthma and allergy or respiratory issues. So I'll go over those. BPI is doing a micro-credential, so if you already have a analyst or auditor or QCI cert, you can add this on. It's a 50-question test. I've got a link here for the schema handbook, so you can go and see what's actually in there. They don't have any specific training programs around it, but the Healthy Homes Specialist training that John Davies and Dennis Feeney do is basically the same material, so it would prepare you for taking that exam. It's about a 2-day class, maybe a day and a half. There's also study materials where if you wanted to go in and learn this on your spare time, what all the different criteria to check out is in a home, you could go and study this on your own and take this exam. The only place, they're offering this exam as a pilot at the ACI conference, so there are a lot of folks that are taking it, but they're still scoring it and kind of figuring out what the score is going to be and what questions they're going to ask. Econ TC is going to offer this test, so if it's something that you're interested in, it will be available. There is no practical exam, and there's no standard. There's not going to be an HHE standard like we're used to with the analyst or auditor standards. It's just a micro-credential that gets added on for already people in the industry who have these credentials. So the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative is basically this hub where they're trying to braid all these resources together to help people get access to the right people to evaluate their homes, which would be us, where to get financing, how can this get paid for. So there's a lot of work being done through this, and so I'm going to go over just the basics, how I understand it. There's also the website here if you want to go check it out on your own. They're saying that 66 cities will be participating in it by 2017, and Portland's on that list to be part of that, and we've been collaborating with them to try to help get that set up, including some of the politicians here in Portland. So there's stuff on the way around that to pay attention to. And they're pointing to this HHE as trying to get the technical folks in the field to have that next level of understanding about how to evaluate a home for health, and that is the credential they're pointing to. So we're well positioned to be part of that whole scenario. They're really looking at this ability to braid. This was really the key thing, is how do you braid all these resources together? You've got the low-income programs, you've got HUD, you've got things like the Portland Housing Bureau. We're experimenting with this in the Coley neighborhood. It's really challenging you've got to have somebody that's almost like a social worker working with the homeowner to go over all the options for them. So they want to create this single point of entry for a homeowner. So it's not like homeowner calls us and we find out that they may qualify for low income, so we send them back to the low income program. And then maybe they want to pull financing for some things. So it's like they're getting bounced around, and it can be really challenging. And who is the jurisdiction? What are the different policies and standards that have to be followed? So we've been kind of in the mud with that with the Coley program. So we're getting our feet wet to be really primed to work on something like this. And then there's a lot of financing potentially coming from Medicaid, private insurance, and investors. And I'm not going to claim to be an expert on how all this works. There's definitely more details to this. But basically it's a pay-for-success model where you have private investors who want to invest in health in the home and people's health. They're paying up front for the work to get done. And then once we prove that the results are achieved, then you're going to have like social programs, government, insurance companies come in and pay back that loan. And there's some interest involved for some of the investors. So it kind of works for everybody. And they've been using this model in different parts of the country, and it works. So something to check out. One of the main thing they have up here is the 8 elements of a healthy home. So you have keep it dry, keep it clean, keep the home safe, keep the house well ventilated, keep it pest free. This is relatively something that we don't get into as much, but you guys have done some work around this. Keep it contaminant free, keep it maintained, and the 8th element of GHHI is keep it energy efficient. So a lot of these things we know how to do really well. Keeping a house dry. This is kind of a behavioral thing around keeping it clean, but there's really good education around this. And there's like kits that you can give homeowners, HEPA vacuums, cleaning materials, removing carpet so they can clean their hardwood floor. Keeping it safe, we're used to stuff around carbon monoxide combustion issues, but they really get into trip ball hazards, especially around young children. There's been a lot of cases of children falling out of the second-story window just because like windows open all the way up. There's locks that you can put in, strangulations around curtains and curtain strings. So this is a little bit newer for us. Well ventilated. This is really in our wheelhouse. Pest-free. We've done a little bit of work around this. Contaminant-free. Keeping it maintained. So I kind of feel like we are 60 to 70% of the way there. There's just a little bit more knowledge that you guys can get, and you'll be a healthy home evaluator in no time. Any questions around this one? So I pulled together some of the stuff from all the sessions I went to around why do we need to do healthy homes work. And so I went to a few different things on indoor air quality and ventilation requirements and looking at studies that were done. So the evidence is very clear. There's 90% of a child's time is spent indoors, and unfortunately, children are used as the canaries. And they're the first indicator that there's a health problem in the home, which is unfortunate. We don't want our kids to be those canaries. 1 out of 5 people in the U.S. have asthma or allergies. So there's a variety of reasons that people get these, but there are triggers, indoor air pollutants in the home that trigger these things. And we want to reduce these. And we have the ability to do this right now so that people have less times going to the hospital or taking their meds. There's also a need to reduce our per capita spending on healthcare costs. They showed a graph, and we are the number one of the highest, but as far as like, the big players in the game, the U.S. is at the top of the list. It's 16.3% of our GDP is on health expenditures. So health expenditures post the problem. So medications, ER visits, solving problems after you've already got a health issue, and only 9.1% spent on social solutions. So you can also look at this data on this link, but the goal here is to kind of even that out a little bit. Let's put a little bit more money in prevention and solving problems before they happen. And right now our country isn't really wired that way at the GDP level. 6 million people living in a household with moderate to severe home health and safety hazards. This puts them at risk of illnesses, injuries, asthma, lead poisoning, slip falls, and respiratory illnesses. This played really well into a session I went to on indoor air quality. There's a number of these triggers. Some of them we're real familiar with. Nitrogen oxide is a byproduct of combustion. If you're burning fuel openly in your home, you're creating nitrogen oxide. And it is a definite known trigger of asthma. VOCs from all the materials, building materials, paints, solvents, the things that we bring into our home are creating VOCs. These can trigger asthma. There's tons of particulates. Some of the things that make up particulates in your home are dust mites, mold spores. If you get pests in your home, if they're leaving waste around the home, they dander. Your pets, I didn't put that up here, but pets are a big one. Pollen and tobacco smoke. All these things affect the particulates in your home. I tried to find the slide that showed that the fine particles, the 2.5 ppm fine particles, they put a scale up there that showed like all of the different things that you could be exposed to or medical conditions that reduce your lifespan. And number one was blood pressure was the number one thing. Radon was number 24, and fine particles was like number 11. If you're exposed to fine particles, and this is really bad in some areas like China's experiencing now, or if you're down in LA with all of the smog, you're getting exposed to these. It's really bad for your health long term. So there's a lot. Yeah.
Sorry. I know that at the previous conference, Chris Gruber here from Good Energy Retrofit went to a session that had a scientist from down in California who was doing a lot of studies on these fine particles.
Yeah.
And I think it was that turning on the hood fan or the range fan over a stove is one of the most dramatic things that people can do to reduce the fine particulates in their home.
Yeah. Then he brought this up too. Paul Francisco was the guy. He sits on the vice chair of the ASHRAE committee, and he said the same thing here, is that when they did studies, people like cooking a burger with no fan on just throws fine particles all through the home. And actually air fresheners, when you spray those in your home, lots of fine particles, especially if they mix with ozone, then it gets even worse. So yeah, this guy's really knowledgeable. You can go and search him online. He's done this. He presents all over the world on these subjects. Also, this plays into what Ryan was saying. There's a study that just came out that exposure to high levels of carbon dioxide can reduce cognitive function in adults. So there's studies out there that prove it. If you got high CO levels in your office space, your home, you're reducing your cognitive function. We asked him about children. Actually, Jeff was there and asked him, and they don't have that information, but definitely in adults. And then they're also finding there's a lot of people are exposed to low levels of carbon monoxide. It's fairly common. So if you want to look out at his study, that he's done a number of studies talking about indoor air quality. One of the ones he presented was results from a weatherization program in Chicago that I thought was really interesting. They took about, I think it was like 50 to 80 homes in the Chicago area, and they set up all these. They had like 6 different things: canisters to measure formaldehyde, canisters to measure toluene, radon. They measured CO2. They didn't measure particulates in this study, and he said he wished he had, but this was from a few years ago. They found that what they did is half of them, they're all single family, half of them they used the new 62.2 2013 ventilation standard, and the other half used 62.89 to see what the change would be. And I don't have all the percentages, but it was pretty clear that the homes that they put the 62.2 ventilation standards in had all reductions in CO2, VOCs, and radon on the first floor. The 62.89, they also experienced a percentage lower in these, but it wasn't as much as if you used this standard. And this was exhaust-only strategy. So a few of the presentations I went to were like, don't use exhaust-only strategy, and I'll show you why in the next section. But it definitely works. The question is, where does the makeup air come from when you use exhaust-only strategy? So I'll show you another multifamily thing I went to that really touched on that. What he did show, though, is if you use exhaust-only strategy, you may reduce radon on the main floor, but it increases radon in the basement. So that's not good for somebody living in the basement, and that's why you need a real mitigation system that does it at the subsoil level to reduce basement radon. I tried to go to this other quality control session. There were so many good there would be like 13 sessions stacked up with all amazing content. It's very hard. Some of them were standing room only, so I decided to go into this one on multifamily. There's just 2 individuals in the Boston area that are really knowledgeable around multifamily, and they went over their studies of doing guarded blower door tests on apartment buildings, and I got a lot out of this. So if you look over here, this is a guarded blower door test. So if you have 9 units stacked, in order to know the infiltration of this one unit in the middle, you have to run 5 blower doors and reference them all out to the outside, bring them all to 50 pascals, and then you'll know exactly how much of this air is infiltrating from outside of that unit. You're compartmentalizing that unit. Can you guys imagine setting up 5 of these? I mean, sometimes you just don't want to set up the one. They had a picture they showed of them setting up, and I was thinking, God, how much does that cost to set that up and maintain all that equipment? If you had 1 floor, it'd be a lot easier. You just need 3 of them. Or if you have a duplex, then you need 2, and that kind of touches into what we run into sometimes with duplexes. So they tested a bunch of multifamily units. They use exhaust-only ventilation. They use these guarded multi-blower door tests to find out. What they found is that unit, 23% of the air approximately is coming from all the other units. So you may get the majority of air from the outside or from a common space, but they're finding that all this air was coming from the other units, and that's not good, especially if your neighbor smokes or has pets. So multifamily can be really challenging, and they talked a lot about the new buildings that are being constructed where they're not sealing off each unit. They're only sealing the perimeter. So what's happening is they're trying to meet the standard. They're putting in exhaust only, and then everybody's running their fans and has dryers on, and the pressures are all over the place. I thought this was interesting because this may play into when you guys run into a duplex or a fourplex or somebody has an ADU basement. It's something to think about.
Measure and verify.
You can measure and verify. There's a quick 0.85. It's a ResNet recommended infiltration coefficient you can use. Where if you have multiple units and don't have guarded testing, you could basically take the infiltration and multiply it by 0.85, and that's the amount of air you're getting from the outside. That was the quick math, but they found it was more close to 23%. They like supply only and balanced ventilation strategies opposed to exhaust only, but if you're going to use exhaust only in these, just put some fresh 80s in. They had another word for fresh 80s, but basically, holes that let fresh air in close to the exhaust. Yeah.
I have a question about the balanced ventilation. Do you have to synchronize the fans, or you can have to set With 2 fans on separate controls, and you just make sure you switch them.
They have a centralized control.
Central.
Yeah, it's basically an HRV.
Yeah.
There are a couple systems where you can bring supply air in at a controlled rate and exhaust at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm just thinking it's more expensive, right?
it's definitely more expensive.
The kitchen fan, you can do the trigger wire, turns it on, pulls it from the furnace.
Yeah.
So that's the basic one.
There are a lot of products out there where you can put in a balance system, pull air to the supply, and the exhaust fan goes on and the furnace fan goes on. Air Cycle's making some really good stuff now. So a lot of relevance to our single family, because if you think about it, this is kind of like a house. You got an attached garage in the basement. You may have a crawl space over here, and here's the basement. Here's the different knee wall cavities, and it's the same thing. If you're trying to seal off the knee wall cavity, crawl space in a garage, and like one of those 3-story Portland homes, you have to do a lot of sealing to make that work because you don't want to pull air from your crawl space. And what they found is that a lot of air that's coming in is from the attic. A lot of the air that's actually supposed to be from the outside is like exchanging air into the attic. If you have somebody who's smoked in a home, you really smell that in the summertime when that air starts to come back into the house. I'm just going to wrap up with Carolyn's shown us from New Zealand, and she showed a couple pictures of seismic, their aftermath, and I was like, I saw these photos and I was like, I got to know more about this. So I talked with her and went online. They had a seismic event in 2011 in Christchurch, and they have a program that's been in business for 20 plus years where they go in and they help people weatherize their homes. They get recycled curtains for drapery, and now they've been doing a lot of post-earthquake work. And I started thinking about what our world would look like post an earthquake. And you can see like they're using that opportunity now that all this masonry fell apart to insulate the walls. This is kind of what it looked like with reinforced masonry. It was only a 6.3, and you know we've heard numbers 7+ in the Portland area. This was in 2011, so it's been 5 years, and they're still cleaning up, repairing roofs. There's a lot of wall, roof, structural repair. She also was, I kind of asked her, I was like, what happened with all the insurance agencies and the government? And she was like, she just kind of stared at me and said, no one was prepared. People are still trying to get their insurance money back. Still the government's trying to work to help people from being displaced. And what they're trying to do is help people get the energy upgrades they need while the earthquake work is being done.
I have a slide deck from Carmen Merlot, who is our contact at Portland Bureau of Emergency Management, and she went down to Christchurch and explored the aftermath of those quakes. And it wasn't just a single quake. There were quakes that built up over periods of time, and so successive quakes that compounded and escalated to a final quake that literally decimated the city of Christchurch. There's a couple images from her slides that look like the city was carpet bombed in World War II. You look at those images, the satellite imagery, and go, this is from a war. And so it's absolutely fascinating to understand the implications of what those seismic events have done to not only the energy side of improvements, but the seismic rebuild and retrofit work that's done now. And that learning is being brought back here, and why FEMA's deploying dollars for pre-disaster mitigation work here right now. So it's interesting how that all ties together.
Yes.
Another 6.5 just hit Japan this morning too.
Really?
Yeah, you guys haven't heard. 6.9 in Myanmar.
All right, we're going to turn things over to Chad. Hopefully everybody can stick around for a few extra minutes. It's a lot of content, but we really appreciate it.
I'll go mine will be fairly quick.
Okay.
A lot of great sessions. The 5 of us went out to have a beer afterwards, trying to pick out who was going to talk to what. And I spoke last. I spoke up last. So a lot of the good topics are already taken. And we were halfway through our sessions already. Actually 2 days in. We had 1 day left. I was going to talk about the OSHA confined spaces, but I'll do a plug. Lisa's going to come in. She's much more knowledgeable about it than I am. Lisa Pickert from Neil Kelly was a home performance project manager for about 2 years or something. Knows what we do, and over the last 6 months or so, she's been the safety coordinator at Neil Kelly, and she's going to come in and talk about the new OSHA confined spaces rules and how it applies to what we do. So it's the next Techie Breakie, and it's going to be pretty cool. You'll learn a lot. I went to a session there, and the guy from OSHA in Austin spoke, and it was right after lunch, and I struggled to stay awake. So you mix out after lunch with OSHA, and yeah, there's a lot of good information, but man, was it dry. One thing that we did learn, which I'll share now, is inspectors are not tied to the rule of having a spotter outside or whatnot. They don't have to have the same. It's people that are doing the work in those spaces that are that they're really concerned about. So
insulators, plumbers.
Yeah, but an auditor doesn't have to follow those same rules. So, highlights. There are so many great sessions at these things. Like Jason was saying, they'll be in an hour and a half time slot. There's 13 different ones, and I had highlighted 6 of the ones I wanted to see, but you got to pick one. So for the most part, I did a pretty good job picking. There was one. It was Laura and I were in.
Which one?
The solar hot water one.
Oh yeah, that one, and then the other solar one was.
They were both. So also the networking is there. DOE's there, better buildings. I got to spend good quality time with our friends at ETO, Inhabit. It's an important time to not just talk business. You're talking business, but you're doing it in a different way. So it's an important time. Austin, Texas is awesome. I got some pictures there. And then, but one of the sessions I went to was future product development that will shape what we do. And the guy didn't have any slides. He was a really smart guy. He's writing a book on kind of this subject, and it's not just about home performance, but it's about building in general. And there's some cool stuff coming out. We can talk about phase change material, 3D printing, and then some stuff about robots. That isn't really. I mean, phase change is here. That's something that we could go out and do right now, and which we probably should do in some of these finished attic spaces and whatnot. So I'll start there. Phase change material is a substance with a high heat of fusion, which means it's melting and solidifying at different temperatures, and you can fine-tune that to what temperature you want. And so what it's doing is it's absorbing heat during the day, and then it will release it when that temperature cools down in that room. It will release it back into the room. So the room gets too hot, it's sucking that energy out of the room to maintain the ideal temperature in there by going from solid to liquid. And then when it cools off at nighttime, it'll release that energy back into the room. Not mechanically, it's all chemical. It's like a wax type thing. So yeah, this is basically what it's doing. So it captures it in a solid state, absorbs it up, it becomes a liquid, and then it'll release it back out and become a solid again. And it'll just do it day in and day out. It comes in sheets like this. 16 3/4 wide and 24 inches wide. So it can go inside the studs. It's basically the way it is. And you put it on the back side of the drywall, then you put your insulation in, and it helps keep that even temperature in your room without using mechanical. So here's some pictures of it being installed. I think an awesome place for this is knee wall attic spaces. Right? You put this in between the studs and you insulate it, and it's really hard to maintain a temperature in those rooms. Our solution right now is throw in a ductless heat pump, which is a great solution, but it's also plugged in. So you're paying for it, not just initially, but you're paying for it, that comfort over time. And here's a way to do it while without plugging it in.
Is it a vapor permeable product?
It is a plastic. It's not permeable, but it's also not airtight. So you're going between the studs, right? So, and it's not. So it's not like a continuous vapor barrier. It's just going in between the studs.
This would be a really fun one to measure in your knee wall space one. So let's take a house that's got that knee wall space in the story and a half. So speaking as Mike McFarland here for a second, go ahead and data log that room for a little bit. And his goal and objective in all of his projects is no more than a 3-degree temperature variant from top to bottom anywhere in that room that you're at. So data log that before you do this work, then measure it again after you do the work, see what the variance is in that space, and then you still have other solutions that you can deploy with a ductless if you wanted to down the road. But a perfect example of like how you can use that technology right now and get some really good results and go, hey, this is a product I want to use or don't want to use. So
and you don't have to use it. I mean, if it's open and there's no drywall and you want to use it in surrounding the whole room, great. But you don't having gaps isn't necessarily a bad thing either, right? So it's not something that you like to have to cover completely. So on a knee wall attic space, you're not going to do the slopes because you can't get to them, right, to put it in there. So you might do the knee walls and the flat. Right?
Well,
And you're not doing the gable ends.
It's functionally the same as having a 55-gallon drum of this stuff sitting in the middle of the room, right? I mean, you're just trying to capture energy and release energy, right?
Correct. You're doing them. It's going to be more even because it's spread out,
Yeah.
right? So, but it's.
Does it?
Is that?
Can I ask? Does it come in different temperature settings? Can you buy it straight from the
Yes.
manufacturer at different temperature ranges so
Yes.
that your homeowner who's comfortable at a lower temperature or a higher temperature?
Yeah,
In the room.
you
so to
can
speak?
tune the room, and they'll do a custom setting like that. But I think you buy it at 70 degrees or 68 degrees.
Okay.
And you can go out and buy this now. The most common one is Bio PCM. Phase change material.
expensive?
Is it expensive? I met with these guys about a year and a half ago, and at that time I think it was, I want to say it was $3 a foot. So not terrible, but also not cheap.
No.
But how much is a ductless mini split if you can get away from that?
And how much is it to run on a daily basis? So, cool stuff. And that's here now. 3D printing, not here yet. Well, it's here, but it's not here in the sense that we're going to use it. They're going to print houses at some point. They're printing building materials. They're using these printers with concrete. You hook up a concrete truck, and they're doing foundations, or they're doing walls that are getting set up elsewhere in a factory, and then they move them out onto site and installing them. But if you think about the current building process and the waste factor that's involved in it, I mean, I know Ryan has framed a few houses. I've framed houses. The studs come at the right length, but nothing else does, right? Your pile of stuff out front is huge. 20% of what you're buying is going to landfill, right? I mean,
I have pictures of my projects that look like that, and I cringe looking at them.
So everything every angle is cut. And it's just all going to waste, right? So if you think about if we're able to cut back at labor waste by printing the material we need in the lengths we need, right? Potentially even on site. It's an amazing cost savings, but it's also, you grow a tree, think about how much is wasted on, it's going to the mill, they peel the bark, they cut off to make it square, and then they send it out to a job site, and you're cutting it up into little sticks, and the waste on that tree is probably 40%. And yeah, they grind it up, and then they use it to power their kiln, to kiln dry the stuff, but it's still a ton of CO2 that's going into the atmosphere. So printing it on site is going to hugely reduce the waste factor and the material that goes into it, but it's also going to reduce the labor to install it. That is
how far away is that technology?
That's right there. China's doing it already.
China's doing it. That's a 6-story building.
That's crazy. Holy crap.
There's phenomenal videos on this online. If you just search 3D concrete printing, you'll see this in action, and it's
this is a 6-story building, but there's also they're all, like, you can see that she's not taking a picture of the building. They're taking pictures of some other houses there. But they built a house in a day because they were able to print everything at their factory, bring it out to site, and then just assemble it like Lego blocks. It was pretty incredible. But yeah, that's a 5-story? Yeah, 5-story building that was printed. I go back to that picture. This is probably not that far out.
No, this is being done right now.
On site?
Yeah, they'll do it on site where they'll bring in the track and the system, and that's exactly what it looks like. And you'll have the printer set up in a large scale like that. This is live and functioning today. So.
Well, and then you can insulate if you print it, you have a cavity you can insulate right afterwards. And
actually, there is a company that's doing insulation. It's printing, and they're using nanotechnology, and they're getting crazy R values.
Cool.
Like R20 per inch.
That's great.
It's crazy. So.
Well, no gaps either, so no air leaks.
No gaps, no air leaks. Yeah. But the coup de grace. This guy was talking about. There's 2 companies right now working on it. A 3D printer that takes atmospheric carbon as their raw building material.
Think about that.
Sucking carbon dioxide out of the air, creating oxygen.
It's called a 3D.
And printing carbon fiber. Yeah. It's freaking crazy. It kind of blew my mind. I'm like,
exactly.
So, anyway, networking there is awesome. Why should you go there? The sessions are great, obviously, but the networking is also pretty amazing. You already saw Willie. This is a picture of Stevie down on the waterfront. That was a gorgeous city. We had amazing weather there. There was a few beers had too. Next year, Nashville, Tennessee. So that was it.
The other thing for technicians that haven't gone to ACI before, and anyone that's on the phone, I can't voice this enough either. If you plan enough in advance, stash some money away to be able to go to this, there are always scholarships right before this goes off. So apply for scholarships through programs like ours, or through Energy Trust, or through ACI, or Home Performance Council itself offers up scholarships. And so, if you start thinking about this as something that you want to do, in the year to come, those are all opportunities for you. So just plan, and you definitely could go join. And it'd be great to have more people there.
It's in the budget, right, Chad?
Yeah. I haven't gone through the budgeting process for next year.
Laura, you want to talk about your scholarship? Where you got it?
Yeah, I got mine. I just want, I don't know, I'm on some email list that like was like, apply for the scholarship. We have like 70 to give away. And apparently, I don't know if they even gave out as many.
I don't think they did.
Many. I don't think they did. Like, I didn't see, I met a few other scholarship people that were there, but yeah, I don't remember the process, but it was like pretty easy. And it essentially covers the cost of the conference. So I still had to pay for plane ticket and just mainly the transportation. I stayed with a friend's family, so.
Yeah, a lot of times if you are going down, you can room up with other people. It's pretty easy to connect a network there of folks that are going and share those expenses, so it reduces costs as well. So be creative.
It's around $300 or something.
It was like $800
For the ticket?
For the conference.
for the conference.
ticket?
Yeah, that's what the scholarship covered. Yeah.
How many people were there?
1,100.
If you end up,
Yeah.
if you submit a presentation, if you don't need a presentation, you get a discount.
You get $100 off.
You get a discount, and like Ryan said, you can, like, we roomed up with people. Yeah, great opportunity. One of the other things that I had talked to a few people about is there was a lot of talk about the face of our industry, like what is home performance people going to look like, and there's a lot of the original guys that have been there for a long time, but there's also all of us and young emerging folks that are getting into the industry, and how do we embrace people coming out of college to come into our industry. And it was a big talk about how to deal with all the generations have different ways of approaching work, and how do we work together. There's a lot of learnings from each other from that goes down the line, and there's a lot of women coming into the industry, which is really great. There's more women graduating from college looking for careers that are challenging. We have a lot to offer somebody. There's just a lot to learn. There's a trade aspect to it. There's a hands-on aspect. There's a craft. There's a problem-solving aspect. There's the technical aspect. It's just the things that you guys get to do in the field can pull a lot of stuff you learn from school. And we need to embrace people coming out of school and bring them into our industry, not be inclusive, bring people in. And so that's one of the things I got out of the conference. And how do we do that? That's the challenge.
Yeah, I can speak to some of that too, just because, I was probably one of the youngest people there, and I'm like almost 29. So just also, I think I went to the very last session kind of after everyone went home. It was just kind of a wrap up with Chris Dorsey, and there were like 20 of us in there. And just one of the big things was like the marketing aspect of like trying to get like a term to be like, I got my house blank, and you could like tell that to your friends, like figuring out that term. But another one was like, how do we bring young people in? And it's like a lot of, now college has gotten really expensive, and like the cost is prohibitive to a lot of young people, and we realize that we're probably not going to be the same career path forever. So a lot of people aren't necessarily going to college, so they're trying to figure out that next step after even just high school. So like trying to tap into STEM programs and other ways to reach people who might be interested in like this type of industry, I think is a lot more accessible, because not everyone's going to college. And even people who graduate from college, like I didn't really know about home performance, but it's been around a long time. I didn't really know about it until I worked for the Community Energy Project, and we were working with low-income families on a lot of this healthy home stuff like 6 years ago. Like the low-income side of the industry has been working on healthy homes and a lot of things that now the for-profit side is kind of like figuring out. But
There's one thing that you said that I think is important for everyone to hear too, just relating to where we're at as a state and even just as a city here. Some of the individuals that were highlighted there and that are folks that I've interacted with for years at this point. Bruce Manclark, getting adopted into the Hall of Fame this year. I mean, that's one of the individuals that has the data side figured out very well, understands ducks, and is constantly at this conference, been going for years. George Songus, someone that has presented here a number of times, taught at PSU, and is nationally known for his work. And those are just two individuals that you could access easily here to answer any of your building science problems that you don't understand. They're at your disposal and happy to answer questions. And they're at these events, sharing their knowledge openly. And the other part, Chris Dorsey, finishing off, that's a book that all of us have read. Home Energy is one that sits on, I guarantee you, on almost all of our desks as a reference manual that we all use. And to have exposure to these individuals and just walk up to them, have the conversation, and walk away with an email and say, hey, do you mind if I send you a note with a question? And the answer is always yes. No problem. I'm happy to help. And so those are the, like, if I could highlight some of Chad's networking things, those are the networking opportunities that come out of this that will take you to the next level.
If I could just add down here with the Home Performance Guild, Nashville, that's going to be April, May of 2017. Between then and now, we should have 2, 3, depending on how you're looking at it. There's Energy Out West, which is a great technicians conference, which is going to be up in Spokane, Washington, I think in May. The Home Performance Guild will be putting on their state conference again this year in October. This year we're focusing on climate adaptation and resiliency. And so we're going to be talking about, PV and EVs as strategies, and seismic and different ways to sort of home performance can plug into the solutions for climate and climate adaptation and general resiliency. Then I think, I'm not 100% that it's confirmed, but ACI does their regional conferences every 2 years. And last year it was in Seattle, in February 2015 it was in Seattle. And I think it's coming back to Portland in 2017.
That was the word I heard.
That was the word you heard? Yeah. Sweet. So hopefully, right here, we'll have an ACI of sorts right here just in February, less than a year away. So look for those types of opportunities. It's great professional development. It's great networking, as everyone said.
One thing, just Jason, thoughts here on how can we best get the information to all of you so that you can look at the slides and presentations. So ACI has a website that we use, or an app that we used while we were actually at the conference to take a look at the sessions that we wanted to go to. I think following this, the recording that we'll push out, we'll have all the content from today. But I think I want to work with Jason and figure out how to surface up that content as well, because right now Bethany from ACI is loading all of the presentations up into that system, and so that would give you the opportunity to see all of the sessions that were there, pick some of them, and draw down the actual content, because all you got from us was just the highlights today. But this would give you the opportunity to actually see what was presented in each session.
Unfortunately, it's just the slide decks.
Yeah.
It's not the
audio
recordings of the presentations, but you can get a lot out of the slide decks as well. ACI has a great website where you can go back to previous conferences as well, and there's amazing content on there. There's webinars, there's sessions. I think they recorded up until 2014. So you can go on there and see stuff you can see George Songas and listen to him go through his slide deck, and
cool.
And whatnot. So check out the ACI. I don't know where you go, archives.
Yeah, and I'll try to include that. Jason and I will try to include that in our follow-up email to y'all from this. Yeah.
All right, I think we'll wrap up. Appreciate everybody staying a little extra time today. If there's any questions, let us know. Make sure if you want to get BPI credits for today, you sign up on the sheet. I believe it's still over there. And if you didn't get a pastry or a bagel, grab one on your way out. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.